I think actually it's a great segue in the conversation we just had with Stephanie, talking about, some of these difficult conversations we tend to have, and stress and anxiety we tend to put on ourselves. And one of those difficult discussions is death. And why do we have such a hard time? And how do we celebrate somebody's life? Well, my next guest, really excited to talk to her. I'm joined by Katharine Smithrim from Gathered Together, and you are a celebrant. Welcome, Katharine. Great to have you here. Let's start with that. First of all, what is a celebrant exactly?
A celebrant is a kind of officiant, but we are really trained in the art of creating and leading ceremonies, personal ceremonies for specific situations. So it could be weddings, funerals, celebrations of life, baby namings, and for everyone, with or without a religious affiliation, all the LGBTQ plus community, any nationality. And so celebrants are able to do weddings that are specifically designed for a couple who may not fit into any of the traditional places.
Yeah. We're going to talk specifically today about celebrations of life and that word death, because we had a great conversation actually with all of us in the green room, right? All the guests today, and talking about the fact that we're so afraid to use that word death, or that somebody died. Why is that? You don't know?
I don't really know. No, I think one reason is that death is so removed from us in our culture that if someone dies in hospital, you don't even necessarily see them. They're whisked off to a funeral home perhaps. They may be cremated. Sometimes people will have a viewing, so you actually see someone who has died. But I think it's quite removed. And so we have all of these pseudonyms now, so we don't have to say someone died. The polite ones are he passed away or she lost her husband. And I have heard this twice in a family gathering when someone said she lost her husband, and a child would say, well, why can't they find him? So I love the wisdom of children who really tear us into, that was a silly thing to say. That's right. Yeah. So, and so a lot of people don't want to have a funeral. And I think part of that is because they don't want to think about their own death, they don't want to think about their family's death, they don't want to draw attention to death.
Why do you think, Katharine, it is so important to celebrate someone's life?
Well, I think it's important to honor a life lived. I think it's important to honor the grief of the people around them. And in every culture through millennia, they have created ceremonies for those transitions in life, for birth, for marriage, for coming of age, for death. And why have they lasted these thousands of years? Because they're powerful and they're meaningful.
Right. There are different new innovative ways, that we celebrate people's lives. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. There's sort of an umbrella organization in Ottawa called Death Care Ottawa that would have all of the information about the various kinds of attitudes and approaches to death and dying. So you would know about birth doulas who would help a pregnant woman through her pregnancy and through the death. Through the birth of their child. Well, a death doula helps a person who is dying and their family through the process of dying. So there are death doulas, there are death cafes online and in person where people talk about their experiences of losing a loved one. See, I've just said losing a loved one, of the death of a loved one. There are new ways of treating a body that in the green burial community, of people caring for the dead loved one on their own. And another green burial is sort of a climate conscious, sustainable practice where you do not use embalming fluid in the body because it's really toxic that goes into the ground. So those are some of the new approaches, and having a celebrant is another new approach. That it's not the church, and for some people, especially in our secular society, if they've been to a funeral, some of the language and some of the ideas don't have meaning for them.
Yeah.
And it can even make them feel like a real outsider. And we do not want to make people feel like outsiders.
Not only that, I think sometimes, and I've experienced this, where the person speaking, you know that they don't know that person, right? And it drives me crazy.
That's right.
That you have, and I guess it's tradition. And so, how does somebody like yourself, like when we're talking about the death of somebody and somebody has died, how do you work with a client in creating that celebration of life?
I meet with the family. During COVID, it was all, through Zoom. I meet with the family. I have a whole series of questions to give me an idea of who the person is who has died. And then we talk about who would like to speak, who would like to be the storytellers, what kind of music did this person love, what kind of music would be meaningful for you. Are there poems? I can suggest some. Are there readings that you would like to do? And then my job is to find a way to put all of those elements together into a ceremony that is beautiful and meaningful and personal about that person who died, because you're absolutely right. You can go to a funeral and it's like it could be for anybody.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's. I think it's fascinating because on the other side of it too, it's something that's come to mind, and perhaps some people think it's going to be a little macabre, but the burial of people. It takes up space. When you're talking about, green initiatives, right? This is a lot of space that we're taking up in communities around the world as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So I just think it's so nice to hear somebody like yourself talk about it sort of outside the box a little bit, where there are other options out there. Katharine, before I run out of time, how do people get in touch with you?
My website is gatheredtogether.ca. So you remember that people are gathered together for a funeral or a wedding.
It's been really special speaking with you.
Thank
so
you,
much, Katharine.
and you.
Really appreciate it. Again, gatheredtogether.ca, all one word. We'll be back with more Daytime Ottawa after this. We're talking astrology, as a matter of fact, right after this.